Okay. Good evening and welcome to the City of Laurel Planning Commission. This is the 584th regular meeting. The meeting is being held via Zoom. Notice of the meeting and information regarding the meeting has been posted to the City of Laurel website. Please note that if you wish to be heard at this meeting, there was a sign-up process. As we go to public hearing, I will first recognize those people that have previously signed up, and then I will open it. I would ask that people please limit their comments to no more than 2 minutes, and that is with the exception of the applicant, who will be introduced following the staff report for each of the agenda items. With that, Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Councilmember Sidnor,
Here.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wilson, I think you're muted.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Kish,
Yeah.
Mr. Welford,
Here.
Ms. Bonner, Chairwoman Bettman.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, the approval of the amended minutes from the June 15th, 2021 meeting. We have each received these electronically. Is there any discussion or recommended changes for staff? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion we approve the minutes for the June, I don't have the date here right in front of
15.
the June meeting.
Do I have a second? I believe you can second even if you were not. Thank you. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Kish,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Welford,
Abstain.
Chairwoman Bettman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, the amended site and landscape plan and resolution number 21-08-PC, Nasia Nail and Beauty Supply Store, 14805 Baltimore Avenue, filed by Thinh, Nguyen. Included in this agenda item is the public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. We will now have the staff report.
Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow board members. Amended site and landscape plan application was filed on May 18, 2021 by Ram Shrestha to extend and enlarge the existing parking area located at 14805 Baltimore Avenue, Laurel, Maryland. Under date of June 18, 2021, the application and a cover letter asking for comments were sent, and along with the memorandum to the City of Laurel departments. Comments from the City of Laurel departments are stated in the staff report. On June 21st, 2020, a letter explained the nature of the application and advising of the scheduled public hearing before the City of Laurel Planning Commission was sent by standard mail to all contingency property owners. All return receipts were received. The file contains an affidavit signed by the applicant attesting that the zoning sign has been placed on the subject property and it will remain and shall remain until the decision is reached by the Planning Commission. It is recommended that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approve the amended site and landscape plan for 14805 Baltimore Avenue with the following condition. The applicant shall obtain all required City of Laurel building permit. The applicant shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations in the department of the and in the development of the property. That concludes the reading of the file, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burrow. Is the applicant on, Mr. Burrow, and do they wish to speak or only answer questions if there are questions?
They should be on if questions needed.
Thank you. Let me go by Commissioner, Mr. Kish, any questions for staff or the applicant?
None here.
Thank you. Mr. Welford?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Councilman Sidnor?
No question, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I just have one comment. I do applaud the applicant for this. The business is booming, and I frequently am on Route 1 and the parking lot is full. So from a safety aspect, I think this is a very good move to allow for room for turnaround. I would please comment to the applicant that, and maybe it's just the amount of business, but I would ask you to please, around that trash area, try to keep that a little cleaner. That is, even in the picture that was in tonight's presentation, there are always empty boxes overflowing and all of that. And I just ask you to please try and keep that area cleaner. And I'm hoping that with the enlarged parking space and things like that, that will allow for that opportunity. With that, I would like to open the public hearing at 6:06 on the amended site and landscape plan and resolution number 21-08-PC, Nasia Nail and Beauty Supply Store. I do not have anyone that was previously signed up for this agenda item. I would like to pause for just a couple of seconds and ask, is there anyone wishing to speak on this application? Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing at 6:07. And if there are no questions, I will ask for a motion.
Madam Chair, Mr. Rick,
Mr. Wilson?
I'll move to approve amended site and landscape plan and the resolution number 21-08-PC for the nail and beauty supply store at 14805 Baltimore Avenue, including the technical recommendations in the staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Welford, thank you. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes?
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Mr. Kish,
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, the map amendment application number 915 Lakeview, 1502 and, I'm sorry, 14502 and 14504 Greenview Drive, filed by BE2 and 10GC LLC and DB, Lakeview LLC, pair of Berman Enterprises, for recommendation to the mayor and city council. We will have the staff report, and then we will have the applicant's presentation, and then we will ask questions prior to opening up to those that are signed up. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commission members. The applicant has made an amendment to the application in order to ensure that the building will be fully used in some capacity. This will be allowed per the code and was confirmed by the city solicitor, who's also on the line. The applicant is seeking a map amendment to amend the current use of the property located at 14504 Greenview Drive by allowing for an office use or a mix of multifamily residential and commercial use. The area is zoned planned unit development existing, and the current use of the building is an office. The applicant is proposing to develop the current office building into 185 apartment units and first floor retail of approximately 6,000 square feet. The applicant is proposing to construct an addition to the rear of the current building located at 14504 Greenview Drive. The current building is 74,138 square feet. In regards to affordable housing, per ordinance number 1962, minimum of 4% of the total number of apartments shall be workforce housing units. Minimum of 4% of the total number of apartments shall be moderately priced units, and a minimum of 4% of the total number of apartments shall be age-restricted units at the same price as the moderately priced units, should there be more than 100 dwelling units. Staff recommends that the City of Laurel Planning Commission recommend approval to the Mayor and City Council for Map Amendment 915 with the following condition. The applicant shall apply for and obtain an amended site landscape plan approval from the City of Laurel Planning Commission. City staff is still reviewing the traffic and parking analysis submitted by the applicant and working with them to make updates and clarifications. And now I'm going to turn it over to the applicant and their team who would like to make a presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members. For the record, my name is Andre Gingles. I'm an attorney with law offices in Laurel, Maryland. Good to be back here before you. Mr. Berman, Kevin Berman, who I believe may have participated when we did the once prior here on this, is also on the line. And I just want to have him make a few opening comments about why we are requesting this amendment, and then have a brief presentation by our engineer planning firm of GLW, which will be done by Tim Longfellow, and then to just mention some of the traffic and parking analysis that we're going through, which will be done by Mr. Linhart. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kevin Berman.
Thank you, Andre. Hello, Madam Chairwoman and board members. So to give a little background, Berman Enterprises is an organization founded by my grandfather and his brother, and we started in Laurel. Their flagship and primary property was Laurel Shopping Center. They developed that one and really kind of nursed and matured those tenants. And then from there, we've kind of kept it kind of expanding in Laurel. From there, we went and built the 312 Marshall, which is the 10-story building right behind it. And then subsequently, we redeveloped Oak Fair Middle School and Elementary into 95 Office Park. So, you know, most of those buildings we still own. We also own some other holdings within the city. So for us, you know, this long-standing view of 70+ years at this point, we really consider the City of Laurel is our partner in what we're doing on all our projects within the city. When these two buildings came on the market, we were really intrigued because we know the office market and we know Laurel from 95 Office and 312. And what we saw in them is, one, there's potential to lease this as office, but 150,000 square feet seems overwhelming to us to lease as office, given our experience in our other office portfolio projects within the city. And that statement has nothing to do with the city of Laurel and everything to do with macroeconomics around offices. You know, with COVID really accelerated an existing trend within the office community. More people are working from home. More people are going to the office less frequently. Office users are choosing to take less space. So in our minds, we looked at this and said, okay, look, we have two wonderful buildings here. When we acquired them, let's pursue leasing on one of them aggressively. And that's what we've been doing. And we've been making some headway. But in addition to that, we're concerned that 150,000 square feet is just too much. So our plan was, let's look at one of the buildings and convert it to a residential facility. The two make great symbiotic uses with each other between shared parking as well as shared traffic. And so the thought is let's convert one of these to a multifamily building to serve current and future residents of the city. In Baltimore City, we actually had a similar project. This one was more vertically stacked, where we acquired a vacant 20-story building where the bottom 10 stories are office and the top 10 stories are multifamily. You know, really showing the benefit of what mixed-use development can be. So I want to thank you, and I'd like to turn it over to Tim to kind of talk a little bit about the site and kind of what we had in mind for our design.
Thank you,
Just before you do that, Robert, do you have the exhibit that we had with our submission? If you could pull that up.
Okay, yes. And Brooke,
Yes.
that one right there? Yep.
Yes. Okay. Tim.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Tim Longfellow for the record with GLW. Kevin, thank you for the introduction, and Andre as well. Looking at the property, again, it's located on the east side of Laurel Bowie Road, Maryland 197, surrounded by Clubhouse Drive and Greenview Drive. And when looking at the project, you know, obviously we're faced with the existence of the two office buildings, and as Kevin explained, this changing in the marketplace now with office, and looking at opportunities here to make some conversions into the residential market for some of this existing space. So when looking at this particular site, we looked at a number of things, including the existing stormwater management that was being for the site, in addition to looking at where best to orient the buildings and how that would affect the parking circulation for the site. So as you know, as we got into this, it seemed like there was a good opportunity here to provide some enhanced streetscape along Greenview Drive and orient this building along Greenview Drive parallel to the road, which actually accomplishes a couple of things. It provides a little bit of a buffer from the traffic on Maryland 197, and it also allows the project to provide a bit of buffer to the parking that's existing on the property as well. And with the current layout here along 197, really provides for a pretty optimal circulation for the parking, for tenants, for potential residents, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing to note along Greenview is that there were 3 access points along the street there, and this project will allow for the removal of one of those access points, which will also help, with circulation along Greenview Drive in this area. So, and it also provides some, this layout of the building also provides for some screening for, potential residents in an internal courtyard as well. So all very helpful from a layout standpoint. From an environmental standpoint, main feature here is really the project currently has no on-site stormwater management. So through this application process, we'll be working closely with city staff and with the folks at DPI in the county, and we'll be providing stormwater management in accordance with the current regulations. For this project, that's going to mean a combination of microbiome retention practices, potential for some permeable practices, all which will net out treating about 4 acres of the site and really enhance the water quality for this area as well. So, you know, all in all, it's a good benefit, you know, to the local water quality and to the environment, you know, upon the completion of the project.
Thank you, Tim. With that, I want to turn it over to Mike Linhart, who's been our traffic and parking consultant as we've worked through the concept here. Mike was having a little bit of problem, and so I just want to see if you're coming through.
Yes, good evening. My connection's been a little bit glitchy, so hopefully this comes through okay and you can hear me just fine. Bear with me here. We have prepared a traffic report, not a full traffic impact study, but a memorandum to the city looking at the traffic and the parking. And page 6 of that memorandum includes an exhibit 2, which is a trip generation comparison of the existing 150,000 square feet of office across the 2 buildings, as it is when it would be fully leased, which it could be fully leased without any additional entitlements or permits. And so that would be the vested condition. And we've compared that to the proposed changing the 1 building out to the residential. And when you look at the existing office, it would generate 296 morning peak hour trips and 274 evening peak hour trips. The proposed reuse of the site would generate 250 AM and 271 PM trips. This would result in a reduction of 46 trips in the morning peak hour and 3 trips reduction in the evening peak hour associated with the redevelopment of this site. And so you can see based upon that, and we believe that is really the key issue as it relates to traffic, the redevelopment of this site would actually reduce traffic slightly on the road network, and it remains within what was previously approved and vested in terms of the amount of traffic generated. The other issue is the parking. We are working with staff to make sure that the site is appropriately parked, and we will continue to work with staff to make sure everyone's comfortable. I would like to point out that office and residential uses are very complementary to each other as it relates to parking. They provide an optimal situation given that parking peaks during the midday. It builds up from 9 AM and builds up and peaks gradually around 11 to 12 in midday, and then it peaks back down until it's essentially very little demand in the evening. And residential traffic peaks overnight at the opposite time that office peaks. So it provides a great situation where shared parking can occur between those uses. It reduces the amount of impervious area and paving that it would not be necessary to serve the site. So that's the extent of what we've looked at, and be happy to take any questions after this is over.
Andre Gingle's back, and maybe just for some final comments with regard to the presentation, we would just note that the multifamily dwelling use, which we are seeking to add as a potential use at the office building, is one that was already allowed in the planned unit development that exists. Obviously, the office exists. As Mr. Berman indicated, and what Robert Love also sort of mentioned in the beginning, our desire is essentially just to add the multifamily use as one of the allowable uses in this area in that office building. We will continue to be very aggressive on the leasing of 1 building, and it does take time to get through an approval process and to eventually maybe move toward financing and permits. And so while all that's going on, which could be at least a year and perhaps a little bit longer, we will still be marketing the building. And so we think that the optimum that we're trying to achieve is to make sure the building stays or the building becomes leased as quickly as possible. And so while we will be continuing those office efforts, we didn't want to have a situation where, as a result of the PUD, if we did get an appropriate office user, we couldn't use it. And hence the desire in our amendment of the application simply to make sure that the multifamily dwelling use can occur on the property and that the existing office use, which is already allowed, can continue to occur if in fact we were to take an office tenant. We actually have a slight modification that we've passed on to staff with regard to the recommendation, should the board see fit to recommend that this residential use be allowed. And essentially what it would do is provide that the applicant would, prior to any residential development occurring, the applicant would obtain that amended site and landscape plan, and then just clarify that the existing office will remain permissible at all terms until a conversion to residential. With that, I have everyone available to address any particular issues, but we think that based on your statute, this use already being allowed by that section, that it's a use that could go into the building. And we think that it gives both the city and the property owner the ability to put itself in a good position to make sure that the building gets leased up as quickly as possible and then continues to be an asset to the city.
Thank you. Before I go to those that are signed up to speak, I would like to first find out if there are any questions from commissioners and councilmen. I will come back after comments. I have some comments and questions, but we'll wait for after. So Mr. Kish, any comments at this time or questions of staff or the applicant or their team? Mr. Kish, I think you're muted. Mr. Kish, we'll come back to you. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you. Just one question for Mr. Love. So the traffic analysis is not required for this map amendment to be completed?
Not this time. At the last meeting, when it came for substantial departure, they said they're going to do their best to get in by then, but it will be required by the amended site and landscape plan. They had submitted it, but like I said, it is currently being reviewed by our department and also the city engineer. There's a few things that they're going to be changing on that.
So we don't need it for this map amendment,
No.
just as we move into the site plan. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you. Mr. Welford?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kish, any questions at this time? There
None
you
at
go.
none at this time.
Thank you. Councilman Sidnor?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. At this point, the agenda item does not require a public hearing. However, I will go through, we do have people signed up to speak. Larry, I'm not sure, is that considered a public hearing?
Sorry. Hello, Madam Chair. Well, was this an advertised? This was an advertised hearing, was it not?
Yes, but since it was a map amendment, it's not one of those official things. I guess I can call it a public hearing.
Yeah, and you can, if anybody's been signed up to speak, you can certainly call upon them. Sure.
Yes, thank you. So at 6:27, I will open this to the public, and I would first like to call Ms. Jennifer Betcher, and please correct my pronunciation. If you would please state your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Bocher. It's not the way it's spelled. You did all right. I live at 9302 Hilltop, that's one word, Hilltop Court, Laurel, Maryland. I live in the Patuxent Glen community. And when you saw some of those pictures, you can see that my backyard. I have a question for Mr. Lenhart. How many parking spaces will be eliminated with this new construction?
This is Andre Gingles. Actually, as we go through the site and landscape plan and make the determination about what number will be needed, there will be some potential elimination. We don't know what that number is right now until we get to a final, move forward with a final site and landscape plan.
Okay, because I have a big concern that it's taking up about a third of the existing parking right now. And I don't want that parking to be moved into the neighborhood. If you're saying 185 new residents, then we can assume maybe 2 vehicles per residence, which would be adding 370 vehicles, which brings me to my second point, which is that of one of safety. And if we have an additional 370 vehicles at the most, there's only one cross street at Clubhouse and 197. There's only one cross street, and that cross street isn't even a true cross street. The other exit or entrance is only on the northbound of 197 onto Greenview. And with that many vehicles being added to the existing 1,354 vehicles from the Glens, from the condos at Greens, and then also the new Patuxent Green part that's being built right now, that vehicle load is 1,354. In addition to what this is asking for is 370. So I wish these safety issues would be considered when you're deciding on this plan. Thank you.
Ms. Ms. Bocher, thank you. Thank you for both of your points. And just want to clarify that what we are voting on tonight is the map amendment application asking to allow residential in there. So please, if this passes within the next, this evening, please stay very involved. You will receive notifications, because the next steps in that will start talking about numbers. And I believe you're staying on for even the next agenda item. And so as you know, this is a long process. We appreciate your involvement at every step. And we thank you for that. And I just want to make sure you know that this evening we're talking about whether we would permit the added of the residents.
Okay, so you're just looking to change the classification of the plot from a Class A office building to allow for residents.
That is correct.
And so I would like to speak against that.
Okay. Well, okay, then thank you very much for clarifying that. I appreciate that. So it's not just the number of parking, you're speaking against the residential. Okay, I thank you for that. I do not have anyone else other than Mr. Brian Berman, and who I suppose you would have called on Mr. Gingles if he was going to speak this evening. Is there anyone
Mr. Kevin
else?
doing double duty, so he's
There
fine.
you go. And thank you. If there is no one else from the public wishing to speak.
I have a question. My name is Tykesha Roberson, and I live at 14102 Greenview Drive.
Welcome.
So my concern is I didn't really get a good understanding as to how this will reduce traffic or improve traffic. I heard something from one of the gentlemen. They were talking about that this will, I think they said something about eliminating an access road, or that this won't really result in a lot of traffic. And so I guess I would like them to elaborate on that, because that wasn't clear if you're going to have more residents living in the development, how that's going to improve traffic.
I can clarify, Madam Chairman.
Ms. Roberson, thank you very much for your question. And Mr. Gingles, please go ahead.
Sure. So the analysis, which is being made some adjustments to as a result of some earlier comments. Mr. Love spoke about that. But what we did is look at the traffic that's sort of vested in the property as a result of the 150,000 square feet of office. Pretty much all development has what we refer to as PM and AM peak hour trips. And so that is the test that's usually done with development. So when we eliminate one office building and change that office building to residential, you then measure the peak hour trips, again, the morning peak hours and the evening peak hours. And as a result, using the rates that are approved and utilized by places like the city of Laurel and the county and Institute of Transportation Engineers, it resulted in a reduced number of AM peak hour trips, and a reduced number in the PM as well, but the reduction in the PM was only 3 trips. The reduction in the AM was 46 trips. And so what we were indicating in the earlier testimony was that the overall, as a result of moving from 2 office buildings to 1 office building and 1 residential, the overall peak hour traffic gets reduced.
Thank you. And Ms. Roberson, just to clarify again, tonight they did speak about the traffic, but if this agenda item passes, in the next steps, when discussing the number of units and the full, as Commissioner Rick Wilson had asked, there will be a full traffic study that will go into full detail based on the number of units. So tonight is not about the number of units. And I appreciate your question about asking that clarification. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak or ask questions on this agenda item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 6:36. And I would have a question for Mr. Love, and then a comment, and then I'll ask the commissioners and Councilman Sidnor if they have any other comments or questions. Mr. Love, the ordinance number 1962 referencing affordable housing, is this one of the first applications of that in the city since that ordinance will be coming up, that will allow for the workforce housing units, the moderately priced, and the age restricted?
That's correct, Madam Chair. This will be the actual first application of that, where we've gone to the 12% essentially, and then also will be the first application in the city of the 50% to 60% ranges for the moderately priced and workforce housing and age restricted. Previously, before affordable housing was at the 70 to 80% range for moderate or of the median income. So this will be the first application of both those.
Thank you. And again, we will get to the motion and the vote, but I wanted to comment that I've been trying to do a lot of looking around at the mixed uses in other cities, in other places, even in downtown DC and all. And there is an overwhelming number. I think we're hearing on the radio every day, every time I'm in the car, about the amount of office space that is out there. So one of the things that I appreciate is that you are still looking to fill one of these buildings with businesses. But I also appreciate the effort to not have vacant buildings and office space in the city of Laurel. So those are really my only comments and my question for staff. Mr. Kish, do you have any questions or comments?
I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Welford?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Just one for Robert, if I could. I'm just curious. Let's just say that this gets approved and goes through, and then it gets a certain number of residences. How does the impact fee work in this case? For, because now we're adding residences, so those impact fees will come into play, right?
Yeah, we'll work that out with the applicant. Typically, it's a higher number than that as far as people. I believe the previous larger one that was in Patuxent Greens was, I think, per 1,000 or something new residents. So we'll work that out with the applicant. But
Well,
yes.
what I'm talking about is the schools one and the public safety one. So
Yes.
that's X number of dollars per unit, right?
I believe so. Yes, and I'll confirm that with Babs.
But it usually when we do it for homes or apartment buildings, that just gets as part of the permitting process, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
and what we'll do is we'll condition that too.
Okay, and then what happens is if the developer decides to go this way, if the Bermans decide to go this way, you'll have to pick a number of residential units in a building, and then that's it. It can't be a sliding thing, right? Where
Correct.
we're gonna. Okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification. Again, this is just as we will be voting, this is the first step, not a committed number or any of that at this point. If there are no further questions.
Madam Chairman, if I just may, just a question, a clarification for Mr. Love. Mr. Love, do I need to submit the revision to the recommendation about the ability for the continuation of office, or that's handled at a different point?
We'll add that. I'm going to put together an amended staff report prior to council.
Thank you.
I'll take it. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Gingles. We'll ask that be included in the motion, whatever motion is made. And at this time, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, I will move that we recommend to the mayor and city councilor full approval, map amendment application 915 Lakeview, 14502 and 504 Greenview Drive as filed by Berman Enterprises and as filed by the applicant, including the amended staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Kish, will you go ahead? I was going to say, or if you don't want a second, if you would take the chair, then I will be able to, it's up to you.
I do not want to second that, no.
So at this time, I would like to ask Mr. Kish to take over the chair, and I will second the motion for map amendment application 915. Mr. Kish, you now have a motion and a second.
Brooke, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes.
Mr. Welford?
No.
Mr. Kish?
No.
So we need 3 to pass it. So
Doesn't pass.
it's going to be a tie.
Actually, the motion fails.
The motion does not carry at that point.
Motion fails.
Let me, Mr. Case, you might ask the attorney for clarification on that.
I'm having a very hard time. I'm having a very bad time hearing everybody. Is something wrong with the sound?
No, you may not have enough bandwidth, John. Kill your video for a second.
Pardon me?
Turn off your video, and that'll give you some more bandwidth for the audio. There you go. You should be able to hear now. We have a 2-2 tie, John, and you're going to have to ask the attorney which way the
Still
motion.
the same.
I don't know what to tell you then.
Larry, in this case, is it that it's just a recommend of denial to the city council? Is that correct?
I would say actually it's no recommendation.
Correct.
Because it was not a negative vote. It was not a positive vote. It's just, I think it comes out as no recommendation.
Well, Larry, the motion failed, right? I made an
Motion
affirmative-
failed. The motion to pass failed. That's correct.
Right. So that's all we can tell the council is the motion to pass fail.
That's right.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So,
Are you back now, Mitzi?
yes, I am.
Okay,
Thank you.
fine.
Okay. Mr. Gingles, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members. Take
Thank
care.
you, and thank you to those of you that have spoken on this agenda item. Moving on to agenda item 5, resolution number 21-10-PC, Planning Commission determination of substantial change to the final approved plan of the planned unit development area located at 14415 Greenview Drive, Laurel, Maryland, 20708. The applicant CS Patuxent Greens LLC is seeking to increase the total approved dwelling units from 389 to 450. Included in this agenda item is a public hearing on the application and final action by the Planning Commission. We will now have the staff report, and then as with the last item, we will go to the applicant presentation and then questions and then the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you again, and good evening once again, Madam Chair and Commission members. The applicant is seeking a determination of substantial departure of the final approved plan of the planned unit development area. The applicant is seeking to increase the total approved dwelling units from 389 to 450 units. If it is determined that the request is a substantial departure from the final approved site and landscape plan, the applicant must seek a PUD amendment/map amendment approval from the mayor and city council. The applicant is proposing to develop 61 additional units to bring the total amount to 450. The proposal includes the following changes to the types of dwelling units. Currently approved are for single-family dwelling detached are 167 units and 222 townhome units. The proposed layout for the proposed change would reduce the single-family dwelling detached to 97 and increase the townhomes to 353. Map amendment number 880 was approved on January 22nd, 2018 for up to 450 single-family and townhouse dwelling units. However, the preliminary subdivision plan from Resolution 18-05 PC, and more importantly in this case, the final site landscape plan resolution 18-06 PC, approved October 23rd, 2018, reduced the total permitted dwellings for the project to 389 units. The Planning Commission has ruled on multiple occasions that 389 units was the amount to be permitted for this project. Considerable increase in this amount along with the design layout alterations can only be seen as a substantial change. The city staff believes that the change proposed does demonstrate a substantial departure from the approved final site and landscape plan. Staff recommends that the City of Laurel Planning Commission approve that the proposed use is a substantial departure from the previously approved final site landscape plan with the following conditions. 1, the applicant shall apply for and obtain map amendment approval from the mayor and city council if applicable. 2, the applicant shall apply for and obtain preliminary subdivision plan revision approval from the City of Laurel Planning Commission. 3, the applicant shall apply for and obtain amended final site landscape plan approval from the City of Laurel Planning Commission. And 4, the applicant shall apply for and obtain final record plat for subdivision approval from the City of Laurel Planning Commission. The applicant is on the line and is ready to make a presentation. Thank you.
Madam Chair, did you want us to proceed?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff.
I'm sorry, I thought maybe you wanted to see if anybody had questions. For the record, William Shipp with law offices in Greenbelt. Thank you for having us out tonight. Madam Chair, it's good to see you again, members of the commission, Councilman Sidnor. We appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. I did want to do two things. I want to ask your indulgence to have my client, Mr. Cohen, make a brief statement about the status of the progress with the project and comments in general. And then I wanted to kind of dive into the question of substantial departure, where we've had many discussions with staff, all very respectful and energetic. And we'll describe our position on that. And of course, you've heard staff's. And first, I'd like to ask Mr. Cohen to say a few words.
Hi, Alan Cohen, 6290 Montrose Road, Rockville, Maryland. Good evening, Madam Chair. It's been a while. Nice to see you. Mr. Council member as well, and the members of the commission. So here we are 2 years later, roughly, after we obtained our approval at Patuxent Greens, and just a little update of where we are as of to date. Obviously, this has been a very complicated, probably my most challenging project I've ever endeavored in my life. But as of today, there are a little over 30 families currently living at Patuxent Greens. We are close to almost 90 sales at Patuxent Greens. In my eyes, it's been extremely successful. We have worked very hard with the different agencies that are looking over my shoulders every single day that we're on site, as well as the city has been unbelievable to work with. We are in constant contact. I mean, sometimes 4 and 5 times a day when there's issues that arrive on site. And we have never, as of today, had one violation from any governmental agency, be it NDE, FEMA, DPI, or the city, which is pretty admirable on a project of this magnitude. What I am requesting, and again, this is new to me with the City of Laurel, I'm maybe just a little naive on the process of what I'm actually asking for and why the staff made a recommendation that this be deemed a substantial departure from the original PUD. Obviously, we are in different times. It's, good, bad, unimaginable what everybody's going through. But as it relates to the residential market, it's on fire. And projects of this magnitude, need to ebb and flow with the demand of the public. Yes, we are successful, but the demand for certain product types is changing. The singles are getting to the point where they are getting very expensive just because of the cost of goods and the demand, be it the demand right now on the single family homes is nowhere near the demand on, as are on the townhomes due to cost. So what my builder asked me to come back to about 6 months ago, we have a weekly meeting and they asked me if I'd be willing to go back and give it some thought, if I would entertain changing some singles to towns. And my first reaction was, you're out of your mind. I'm not going back to these kind people again. The further along we got, the more they asked, and I, spoke with my team and spoke with Bill and sort of really vetted this out. Obviously, if we get to the point where we're able to go back in front of the commission, we obviously have a whole new PowerPoint. We have new ideas, new things that are happening on site. And so what my builder asks is, would the city entertain additional townhouses? And I said, well, obviously they would entertain more townhouses if I probably kept the yield at 389. But as an affordability, I can't afford to develop, to turn over townhouses at the same, cheaper than I can turn over a single family house to my builder. So here we are today asking for some, for me, it's more clarity. I'm having a hard time, and Bill and I have gone back and forth over the past few months, is if you all deem this a substantial change, and we go back to the mayor and council, and we fill out the application for this change, but the PUD has already allowed us to have 450 units. Why do we need to go back to the mayor and council when they've already agreed in the amended PUD for 450? Why can't we just go straight to the planning commission and let them vote yes or no? Obviously I'm not afraid to fight my battles, but I just don't want to have to go through that extra step by going back to the mayor and council when the planning commission will make the final say, yes or no. So with having said that, that's sort of my take on this. I'm just not very clear on the process. And I just would like you all to consider this not being a substantial change, so it does not go back to the commission, so that extra step is eliminated, and obviously giving you all the powers to decide at the end of the day, if I can get my extra yield. If I can, great. If I can't, then it is what it is, but I'm going to try. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Alan stole my thunder a little bit because he jumped right to the heart of the matter. No, that's good. I'm going to be a little more technical because this really is a technical discussion about the ordinance, which is section 20-10.7, which deals with the substantial departure or substantial agreement question. It should be noted that that section is contained within the city's code under the provisions related to the PUD amendment or the PUD approval, which is essentially the zoning map step of the process. And it requires a determination of substantial departure or not when you're filing an amendment to the PUD. This is where we've gone back and forth with staff trying to sort this out. And what I think we're hearing is that, staff is saying that the planning commission approved this project for 389. And we all know that was a difficult process with a lot of questions and a lot of issues. And we worked through it. And that 60 more units is a important number of units to be considered. I'm not even saying whether or not they'll be approved, because that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're not getting into the merits. We would have to prove traffic and circulation and all those kind of questions. But I would say that when the council approved in Ordinance 1924, the PUD Amendment 880 back in January of 2018, what they said was this property was approved for up to 450 units. And the only condition in their language was that we go to the planning commission for a final site development plan approval, which we did. I would take some exception to Robert's description of the planning commission's action as affirmatively limiting the number of units to 389. You may choose to do that ultimately, but essentially that's what was presented and that's what was considered. We could have submitted 390, 395, anything up to 450, and we would have had all the struggles we had to try to convince you to get there. And we still will if we go through this process. We would have to amend our subdivision plan for the section involved, not for the whole project. And then our final site landscape plan for the section involved. And essentially what this proposal does is convert the very last pod of single families to townhouses. It's in the back of the project, interior to Patuxent Greens. It does not change one bit the configuration and layout of joining the existing neighborhood, which is very important because one thing you can talk about with whether it's a substantial change is, are we changing the relationship of the land use between the existing project or the existing neighborhood and the approved project as originally approved? And we are not. We are decreasing the amount of disturbed area. We're increasing the green area by 4 acres. We're going to reduce the number of truckloads of dirt tremendously that have to be brought into the project to some 5,000 truckloads, which equates to maybe up to 6 to 12 months of a quicker construction process for when the total project would be done. All of those things, I think, support the fact that it's not a substantial deviation. It's actually an improvement. The change is this land use configuration between the townhouses and the single family in the back half. It is a change to the site and landscape plan. It is not a change to the PUD amendment. The PUD amendment allows us to propose up to 450 units, subject to the Planning Commission's review of an ultimate site and landscape.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the United States of America was suddenly attacked by naval and air empire of Japan.
It looks like we got hacked.
It appears that someone had jumped in on it, so you can continue, Mr. Ship.
Bill, are you there? Or did they take Bill from us? Bill?
We'll see if you can come back in, give him a minute to see if he
Yeah,
jumps in.
I was just gonna say, let's pause to see if he can get back in.
Call him.
Thank you.
I think he may be back on.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he just, I'm the same post.
Bill
Mr.
Ship's
Ship?
back. I am back.
Thank you.
I don't know what that was.
In a video game, Bill?
It was not me. It was a different participant. I want to make clear I had nothing else going on. But can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Ship, and please continue.
Okay, I'm on my cell phone now because it wouldn't let me rejoin from my laptop because I'd been removed. I do want to say that the diagram I think that's up now includes the layout. Is this the original layout or the proposed layout? It's small on my phone. It's the original layout.
The original. Yeah.
And you can see that the single families in the back phase of the project. Brooke, are you able to put up the revised plan?
Sure, give me a minute.
Thank you. So while she's doing that, I would just say that the ordinance in 10 or 20-10.7 talks about anytime there's after the approval of the final plan of the planned unit development area, which I assert to be the PUD plan for the entire PUD, that when there's a change, any owner can try to change that planned unit plan approval. But then there's this determination that we're dealing with tonight. I don't think it applies to a revision to a site landscape plan, which now you see the revised view. And the importance of this is to show that the revised section is way in the back. It's lower than the sections up next to the existing neighborhood, and none of the section adjoining either the single families or the condo has been proposed for revision. That's just another element of it not being a substantial departure. What is really telling to me, and I'm not going to belabor this too much longer, because I think you can see where I'm going, and I know where staff has come with their position. But if you look in the staff report, their approval or their request to you to approve this as a substantial departure, the first condition says, the applicant shall apply for and obtain map amendment approval for the mayor and city council from the mayor and city council, if applicable. If applicable means if you determine in this hearing that the substantial departure standard applies. What is curious about that to me, and what Mr. Cohen alluded to, is that the only application that can go to the mayor and city council is a map amendment. So that's why staff is proposing that if the commission determines it's a substantial departure, that we would then file an application to amend the PUD, similar to the application you just reviewed previously to this item. And then it would go to the mayor and city council. And as I can only surmise, that what we would be proposing in that amendment is that the mayor and city council approve an amendment to their previous order, 1924, that allowed up to 450 by approving a new order that allows up to 450. The logic of that escapes me in the sense that I think on its face, although the ordinance is not clear, and council and I have spoken about that, and I respect his abilities tremendously, but the result of having to file an amendment asking for the mayor and council to review and approve an application for 450, up to 450. And it would be up to, again, because the planning commission would ultimately decide whether we get 61 units or 40 units or no units. So it would be the same ordinance allowing up to 450, essentially asking them to reaffirm, did you mean what you said when you said it before? And that's why I think the only logical conclusion is that this is not a substantial departure. It is a revision to the site and landscape plan, which will require careful and thorough consideration, and we will have to prove our case. But I don't believe it's an amendment of a substantial departure to the approved PUD. And so with that, I would ask that you not determine, in other words, disapprove the staff's recommended ordinance in this matter, and determine that this is not a substantial departure from the PUD amendment for 880 in 1924, the council's ordinance. And I would just finally state on the record that it is abundantly clear to us and my client that the determination up or down on this matter has nothing to do with whether the planning commission will ultimately decide one way or the other on the potential amendment of units in Patuxent Greens. You still retain that full authority when you review site and landscape plan. With that, we're here to answer any questions, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Shipp. Before I open this to the public hearing, and we do have several people signed up, I would like to ask each commissioner if you have any questions of staff or the applicant at this time. And again, we will come back to commissioners. We will, after the public hearing, we will come back to the applicant for closing remarks. We will come back to commissioners and the councilman before entertaining a motion. Mr. Kish, do you have any questions?
None at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Welford.
No, thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I just have a question of Larry. As far as the staff report, you're not taking any, you concur with it, obviously, with everything in the staff report as statements of fact and statements of law.
Actually, Mr. Wilson, it's Todd Pounds actually is our attorney on this, and he should be able to answer that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Wilson. Yes, I can tell you, everything that Mr. Love said, all of his recommendations are in compliance with the law.
Thank you. That's all I have.
To answer your question directly.
Thank you.
Thank
That's all I
you.
have.
Thank you. And Mr. Ship, I have a question for you. And that is that if it was determined, if the commissioners determined this was not a substantive change, to your point, and it came back to us, maybe this isn't fair, would your next position then be, because the PUD gives you 450, the commission then cannot, we can have lively debate, but that you would then be entitled to your 450?
No, let me state that clearly on the record, that the council's ordinance allows up to 450, doesn't guarantee 450. It allows you to make a presentation and an argument for 450. You can't exceed 450. If we were, that's an excellent point. If we were asking for over the 450, then I would be totally in agreement that that's a substantial departure from the approved PUD. But there in no way ties the Planning Commission's ability to say yes, no, or somewhere in between on a request for an increase. And if we get to that point and I say otherwise, you can remind me of this conversation.
Thank you. Councilman Sidnor, any questions at this time?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The time is 7:09. At this point, I would like to open the public hearing on resolution number 21-10-PC, Planning Commission determination of substantial change to the final approved plan of the planned unit development area located at 14415 Greenview Drive, Laurel, Maryland, 20707. The applicant, CS Patuxent Greens LLC, is seeking to increase the total approved dwelling units. May I ask everyone else to go on mute, please? I think I'm hearing feedback. To increase the total approved dwelling units from 389 to 450. I would ask all speakers to please keep comments related to whether you are speaking that this is a substantive change or this is not a substantive change. That is what is here before us this evening. And as part of opening the public hearing, I would first like to state that the commissioners received 2 written testimonies that were submitted for our review. The first was from resident Kelsey Eustace, and Kelsey's email and letter to the commissioners was, she was speaking to seek approval of the staff recommendation. She for believing that this is a substantive change. The second written testimony that we received was forwarded to us. It is from NVR, the builder of the Patuxent Greens, and the letter did not speak specifically to the substantive change, but did speak to what Mr. Cohen talked about in terms of the availability of the ability of the multifaceted levels of townhomes. So those 2 were received by all commissioners and are entered as part of the public hearing. And with that, Mr. Pounds, do you have any comments in the public hearing, or would you just answer any questions?
I think it'd be more appropriate if I answered any questions, and I am certainly available to do that. Or if the commission, has any questions for me also, I'm certainly available.
Thank you very much. Alex Villegas was available for questions. Do you have any comments at this time? Or Mr. Ship, do you know?
I do not, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Charlie Howe.
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miss Jennifer Bocher.
Yes, hello, Jennifer Bocher, 9302 Hilltop Court, Laurel, Maryland. Before I ask, I have a question to ask. Since the housing requirements to the workforce, moderate price and elderly, will this be applied to this development since they're asking for alterations?
No, they won't, Ms. Bocher. That's actually only through multifamily developments, so apartments is what that falls under within the code.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would like to say that I do believe this is a substantial change. He's adding 61 new households to this, which would increase the traffic if we are assuming 2 cars per household, and the garages are 2-car garages. 122 people to the exit and entrance, which I have already addressed my concerns there. So because of this increase in traffic, I do believe this is a substantial change.
Thank you. Ms. Margot Osborne.
Yes, I do believe that this is a substantial change.
Miss Osborne, I'm sorry,
Yes.
for the record, could you please state your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem at all. Welcome.
Somebody called me and I just picked up. My address is 14239 Greenview Drive, Laurel, Maryland. My name is Margot Osborne. Is that all? Oh, okay.
Yes, welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, I do consider this to be a substantial change. I am concerned. If you look at the map there, I live right behind the Laurel Parkland. And right now I open my door and I look out and I see a drain, a huge storm drain pointed directly at my house. And I don't understand. It seems to me that if you put down townhouses, you have to put down more parking lots, and that just increases less land for drainage. And that since this is, I know that they've added stuff to the, brought in dirt and everything, and I look out and now my house is lower than, what the park, the golf course when it used to be higher up. So I'm just, I don't want more houses. Keep it the way it is.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. I do not have anyone else that was previously signed up. However, let me pause. And is there anyone else before I go back to the applicant wishing to speak on this?
Hi, my name is Taikisha Roberson. I'm at 14102 Greenview Drive. I guess I do believe this is a substantial change. I guess I want to understand how this will affect the emissions of having more cars due to the additional townhomes, as well as how this could directly affect the environmental with the lake and stuff like that, just based on having so many more homes in the development.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, I'm Carol Reed. I live at 14228 Summit Lane in Laurel, Maryland. That's located in Patuxent Greens.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I too see this as a substantial change, but as I'm listening to the discussion here, and I understand that Mr. Cohen and Mr. Shipp are saying that they don't see it as a substantial change. I am somewhat surprised that our governing bodies allowed the 450 to stay in there for them to be even to have the flexibility to come back and state this. It feels from just the person who's living here in the neighborhood as a bait and switch. That's the way it feels. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reed. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, my name.
Mr. Shipp, I will be coming back to you. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
My name is James Robeson. I also stay in the community at 102 Greenview Drive. My question is, I feel like it's a substantial change. I'm really concerned about the impact of the property value of the existing homes here, as well as been noted earlier, the traffic congestion. I understand, that the city wants improvement in, vacant buildings and property that is not being utilized is a concern, but as an existing resident in the community, I feel like this is definitely a substantial change and that it would definitely impact the existing residents in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing at 7:19. Oops, excuse me, I started to mute myself. Mr. Shipp, I will come back to you as the applicant, and then I will see if we have questions from the commissioners or Councilman Sidnor before entertaining a motion. Mr. Shipp. And if you could maybe address some of the questions that came up in the comments.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to commend you on navigating this world of Zoom hearings. It's not easy, I know. So we're all doing the best we can, and I appreciate your efforts and everybody's efforts and the participation from the community. I do want to say at the outset that I know you understand, the commissioners understand that we make legal arguments, but that in no way means that I don't appreciate the potential impacts of new development or amended development on existing neighborhood. We're just talking about the process. We fully expect that we would have to address all of those concerns in a full presentation on a final site and landscape plan. We may not make everybody happy all the time, but we sure are going to try. What I will say is that as for traffic, I'm glad that point came up because I forgot to say in my initial presentation that the ordinance that was adopted for PUD Amendment 880, which allowed up to 450 units, because we were seeking an approval of a PUD amendment for that number, the traffic analysis and all of the offsite road improvements and the road configurations were evaluated and all improvements approved in connection with that based on 450 units. So the traffic was evaluated at 450. In fact, when we met with staff informally about this proposed idea, Public Works staff agreed that we would not have to do an additional traffic study because we've already accounted for 450 units as far as off-site traffic impacts. Now that does not preclude discussion of anything the Planning Commission wants to direct us to look at, but specifically about things like circulation and access. But as far as adequate public facilities and intersection improvements, that was evaluated at the 450 level. So we would need to do much more explanation. We have requested from both associations, the condo and the single families, to come meet with them. With the pandemic, it's been hard to have direct meetings, but we will continue that process. And we will need to talk about traffic, and we intend to do that. we think we have some suggestions there. One question or comment dealt with concern about the townhouses impacting the storm drainage and creating more pavement and being less environmentally friendly. In fact, it's the opposite. The single family houses are more spread out, which requires more paving, more impervious surface. And I think I said in my presentation that in fact, the revision, although more units in the townhouse configuration, actually creates 4 acres more of green space. All of the stormwater management facilities have been installed with this project, inspected or permitted, and will be inspected by the city and regulatory authorities. We are not proposing to eliminate the stormwater ponds. We have brought this project, the prior golf course had no stormwater management, just like the office building project said that project had no stormwater management. We are bringing this property into compliance with current regulations, which is a benefit not only to this project, but to the entire surrounding neighborhood, because we are accommodating storm runoff there appropriately. The traffic, again, I think we can get more information on that when we get to a site plan or preliminary plan revision. And as for property values, we've actually seen out there some sales in the existing neighborhood, and the existing single family houses have sold at significantly higher sales prices than before the project at Patuxent Greens was undertaken. We think that there'll be actually a positive impact on property taxes or property values. I do want to say that none of that means that I don't appreciate when you live there and you need to consider something going on in your backyard that you won't have concerns and questions. We get that. But our point is that simply, again, and I'll wrap up, that with the PUD amendment that was approved by the council, allowing up to 450, this revision and all those difficult questions that the citizens were raising are in the context of the final site and land plan revision, which is in the commission's purview and does not go back to the council. And the 450 approval in the original ordinance stands, and we can function within that and don't think we trigger a substantial departure with this request.
Thank you, Mr. Ship. I'll change up the order. Mr. Wilson, any final comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Welford?
No, thank you.
Mr. Kish?
No, thank you.
Councilman Sidnor?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, somebody want to do it or?
Go ahead, Rick.
All right, Bill, if you want to, go ahead.
No, well, let me find my place here. I would make a motion that the applicant's request does incur a substantial departure as noted and requested actually by staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Quillen, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. Welford,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Kish,
Could I hear the question again, please?
Mr. Kish, the recommendation from the motion from Mr. Welford with a second from Mr. Wilson was in support of the agenda resolution that the applicant is seeking is a substantial change.
this is a substantial change compared to the original plans, and I vote no on this change,
Well,
as I did at the last meeting.
So, Mr. Kish, the question is, the motion is, do you agree that this is a substantial change?
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Quillen, if you will continue.
Chairwoman Bettman?
Yes, and I would like to thank the applicant for your presentation, a very compelling presentation. I would like to thank all of the speakers that spoke. And I would like to say that, as one of the speakers had said about the changing of the numbers, my vote is based on the fact that the determination is a substantial change to the final approved plan of the PUD. We weren't asking if it's a substantial change to the PUD. It is a substantial change, I believe, to the final approved plan, which is the 300 and some number. And that is what I am basing my decision on, as well as from the attorney's input. So with all of that being said, I do concur with the motion that this is a substantial change.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you all for your comments and your input. There is
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice to see you all. Be well, please.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, and I've been
Pleasure.
driving through there and keeping up with the development.
What do you
Looks
think?
Great. Oh, it looks great. And
Thank
I've
you.
even seen the trash trucks going in and out of it. So, which was one of my original concerns, remember?
And I know you were concerned about your accessibility to the office building.
Yes. So
And that was-
far the circle's not there, but it is working. So I do appreciate that.
I appreciate your positive comments. Thank you very much. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
This meeting is adjourned.
Take care.